Hey there, 8th graders, and welcome to today's lesson. So, have you ever tried to solve a really good mystery? You know, the kind where two clues seem to totally contradict each other, but when you look just a little bit closer, they actually fit perfectly together? Well, today, we're going to be theological detectives. We're looking at the super fascinating life of Abraham to uncover the incredible link between our faith, like what we believe deep down in our hearts, and our obedience, which is what we actually do with our lives. It's going to be great, so let's dive right into this.
Okay, here's our game plan for today. First, we'll look at the meaning of righteousness. Second, a timeline of true faith. Third, faith working with obedience. Fourth, surrendering to God's promises. And finally, number 5, we'll wrap up with the godly learner philosophy.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the meaning of righteousness.
So what exactly is righteousness? Basically, it's being counted right with God because of faith in His promise, not by our own perfection. Now, this is a massive clue for us, guys. A lot of people out there think being righteous means you never ever make a mistake. They think it's all about being 100% perfect. But here's the thing. Abraham achieved this right standing with God simply by believing Him. He definitely wasn't perfect, but his deep, unshakable trust in what God promised, that was exactly what God was looking for.
And that brings us to a really foundational truth from Romans chapter 4, verse 3. It says, Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. You see, belief is literally the absolute starting point of a relationship with God. Before Abraham did anything else, before any big actions, he just simply believed what God told him, and his faith was credited to his account as righteousness. Honestly, it's kind of like depositing money into a bank.
Moving right along to Section 2, a timeline of true faith.
Okay, so the chronological proof here is absolutely vital. Think of it as a timeline. First, God tells Abraham to look up at the stars and promises his descendants will be just as numerous, and Abraham believes this promise. Second, immediately after that, he is counted as righteous. Third, much later on, he receives circumcision as a physical mark or a sign of that covenant. And finally, way down the road comes the ultimate test where God asks him to offer his son Isaac.
This sequence, it literally changes everything. Righteousness came through faith, not through circumcision. The sign came later. See, Abraham was already in right standing with God long before he participated in any sort of physical ritual. His faith wasn't the result of following rules or showing outward signs. No, it was a heart posture that happened first. God looked right at his heart, saw that genuine trust, and declared him righteous right then and there.
Now for Section 3, faith working with obedience.
All right, detectives, here's where the mystery gets a little deep. On one hand, we've got Paul in Romans 4 saying righteousness is accounted through faith. But then, on the other hand, we have James chapter 2 saying faith is made complete by works. Wait a minute. At first glance, this looks like a giant contradiction, right? Like, are Paul and James fighting? Are they teaching two entirely different things? Well, as good detectives, we know we've got to dig deeper. Actually, scratch that. They aren't contradicting each other at all. They're actually a perfect match.
The crucial point to solving this whole mystery is found right here in our bonus verse, James chapter 2, verse 22. It says, "Do you see that faith was working together with his works, and by works faith was made perfect?" See, Paul is talking about how we start our relationship with God, which is by faith. But James, he's talking about what genuine faith looks like once it's actually alive in your heart. It's not lazy. It's not empty. True faith actively works together with obedience.
Let's put this into perspective. Imagine saying you are definitely going to ace your upcoming math test. You believe it. You tell all your friends, I'm going to crush this test. That's kind of like claiming to have faith. But what if you never open your textbook? What if you don't do a single practice problem? Did you really believe you were going to ace it? True belief that you want to ace that test is going to naturally lead to the action of actually studying. Your studying doesn't replace your belief. It proves your belief is real. Just like Abraham's faith required action, your faith requires effort and obedience to be made complete.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, surrendering to God's promises.
You see, true faith is surrendered faith, and it basically follows a clear 4-step formula. First, it trusts God implicitly. Second, it responds to God. It doesn't just sit there on the couch. It gets up and moves. Third, it obeys God's commands. And fourth, it continues pushing forward even during difficult tests. Think about Abraham again. He believed the promise of the stars, but years later he had to apply step 4. When God tested him with Isaac, it was incredibly difficult, no doubt about it. But Abraham didn't have to rely on his own strength. He relied on the God who gave the promise in the very first place, and he walked forward in complete obedience.
Now, you might be wondering, what does this ancient journey have to do with us? Well, it applies perfectly to your life today. As believers, you are called to trust God's promises in your own life. You're called to surrender to Jesus as Lord. And crucially, while you absolutely receive His grace and mercy, you then have to walk forward in obedience through God's power. Abraham had literally no reason to boast because God provided everything. But, Abraham still had to actually take the steps. He had to respond.
All right, bringing it all home with Section 5, the Godly Learner Philosophy.
Here at HeroesMart Academy, we intertwine biblical morality with education. Why? Because education without morality can actually hurt and misguide people. Seriously. Knowledge and intelligence are meant to help you make wise, God-honoring choices, not just make you more capable of doing whatever you want. Think about it. If you get really, really smart but you have zero moral compass, you might end up using all that intelligence for the wrong things. Ultimately, your education should be a daily act of faith and obedience.
Romans chapter 8, verses 6 and 7 teach us something super important. Keeping the mind spiritually minded leads to true life and peace. So just like Abraham's faith couldn't be lazy, I really want to encourage you to pursue academic excellence while keeping your mind totally centered on God, truth, wisdom, and making righteous choices. You study hard, you learn your math, your science, and your history for sure, but you do it with a spiritually minded focus. That, guys, is exactly how you put action to your faith right inside the classroom.
As we wrap up, I want you to picture something in your mind right now. Just close your eyes and picture footsteps moving forward in the dirt. Thousands of years ago, Abraham looked up at the night sky, saw the stars, believed God, and then he started walking. His faith moved forward in obedience. So my big question for you today is this: how will your faith move forward in obedience today? What is one step you can take right now to prove that your faith isn't just a thought floating around in your head, but a real, living reality in your life? Think about it and let's start walking.